I just want to let you know that. We want to welcome all of you and all you that are online watching. We're doing something different today. We're not going to look at the book. And by the way, did I give you a book? Okay. That's for you. I got it to Jeff, and then I forgot about you. And then I thought, well, I got you this morning here. This is great. And Cassandra, I want to get you one. So Cassandra Sebastian, this beautiful woman up here, is not a man, but she's at Wholehearted Men. And she is going to be my assistant. She's actually Sheriff Roybal's assistant. Any questions you have. So I want to begin with that if you have questions for the sheriff or for our Congressman, Jeff Crank, if you could just find something to write on. We didn't put anything at your table. And then just come right up here and give it to Cassandra. And then she's going to field them because there'll probably be too many. We already have one right here. And by the way, I'll just let you know, this has to do with concealed weapon permits. So don't ask that one because we've already got a really good question on that. So as we're covering what we're going to cover today, and we'll see where God leads us in this, just feel free to ask questions and write them down and then bring them to Cassandra, and we'll do as many as we can. So if you have your Bibles, would you guys turn with me to Daniel? Daniel chapter 11. I think there's a verse here that fits what we're going to talk about today. Daniel 11. And welcome to all of you that are guests with us today. Your first time here. We're so glad you're here. This is actually I'm taking the Fox News alert. Remember how they do the little spinning thing and it says alert? I always think it's an alert like every 15 minutes. So it's kind of lost its power. But here when I use an alert, it actually is an alert. So this isn't normally what we do. But I felt because of the nature of illegal immigration in Colorado, it was important to have a discussion about it. So Daniel 11:32, look at verse 32. And I think this explains to me, Congressman Crank, Sheriff Roybal, the kind of men that you are. So I honor you with this verse because these are the kind of men that we need in our nation and especially in our county. Daniel 11:32 says, "Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery, but the people," and I would say here, the men who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. That's what we have here, men. That's what we see happening in our county. We have a few good men that are standing up for righteousness in our county, and I appreciate that as one who lives here. And is Ken Davis here today? He's over here. Okay, Ken, would you stand? So Ken is our new chairman of the GOP for El Paso County. So Ken has been a part of Wholehearted Men for years, and he lives out seeking first the kingdom of God. And I love that about you, Ken. Ken's got a big task before him with the GOP in El Paso County, but it's the most important, this is my opinion, but I think it can be supported. It's the most important county in the state for conservative, Republican endeavors that would make a difference in the rest of the state. And so it's real important. And so we need to be in prayer for Ken to have wisdom. There's no money in the account, so we need to raise money there. The Lincoln dinner coming up and things like that. So it's a very important position. So you may have been following a little bit about what's been happening in our county as it relates to the ACLU. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the ACLU. Okay, probably only about half of you, so that would probably be good. Either one of you want to talk about that. Basically suing our sheriff for wanting to follow the federal law against illegal immigration. And these guys are standing up together as a team. All right. So, this is important, you guys. And you 400 men representing 150 churches are men who have influence, and you have a web of contacts and relationships around you that can garner support for what's happening here. And this is very, very important. Now, all of us here are sons of immigrants. Whether it's first, second, or third, or fourth generation, you are. So we're not against immigration in any way. We're against illegal immigration. Okay? And so that's what the issue is. So don't pull any fast ones on me, whether it comes from the media about immigration. In general, I'm talking about illegal immigration. Right? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. All right, so I wanted Congressman Jeff Crank to start out with kind of setting the stage here, and then Sheriff Roybal will follow.
Well, thank you, Pastor Holt. And Pastor Holt's been a friend of mine for many, many years. We hunted together, and remember the time we had your boys down, and we got to an end of a pheasant field.
Your dogs were better. Your dog was better than my dog. I want you to know that.
That was a fun time.
But both dogs could hunt.
That's right.
But his dog was better.
Well, it's been great having Steve as a friend for so many years and a mentor, really. Let me first just say this. I haven't had the privilege. I've been here many, many times. I sit usually over there. There's my table. But I haven't had the honor of sitting up here and talking to you. And I just wanted to tell you what an honor it is to represent you in Washington. And I can't thank you enough for giving me that opportunity. Thank you. If you hadn't noticed, there's a little bit going on in Washington, D.C. It's there's some great stuff. Hurricane Trump hit Washington, D.C. And it's been amazing. I'll just very quickly say, we've been able to do some great things in the House so far. We passed the Laken-Riley Act. That was the very first bill that I got to vote on. And that went over to the Senate, and in the Senate we need 60 votes, and we only have 53 Republican votes in the Senate, so you need to get some Democrats to do stuff. And John Fetterman actually did the right thing, stepped up, and so we should encourage him and a few others who did do the right thing. They sent that bill to the president, and he signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, so that was great. But we've also done a lot of other things. Last week we voted to make fentanyl permanently a Schedule I drug, which has never happened before. It's been something that they've done administratively, but we're going to take it out of the president's hands. Another thing that we took out of the president's hands last week was the ability to shut down fracking across the United States. So we passed that out of the House. We don't want another president coming in and deciding they don't like fracking. So we want energy independence and energy dominance across America. So we're doing some great things, but I just wanted to tell you what an honor it is. Every time I go on the House floor to vote, I have a little card that I vote with, and you stick it in the machine, it pulls up my name, and I hit yes or no. And that card represents 750,000 of my neighbors. And I'm in awe every time I do it. I pull it out and I think about that, and you may not agree with every vote, but trust me, I'm trying my best to represent you, and I really do think about how it impacts our region. You bet. Thank you. To the issue of illegal immigration, that's what I ran on as a candidate. It's what the president ran on. And it is the expectation of the citizens of the United States that different levels of government cooperate and work together for the betterment of the people. That's very simple. We have a rule of law in America, or we don't. And what I've said about immigration is, on any law, if you don't like a law, you can change a law. But you can't just keep ignoring it, because if you ignore that law over time, you lose the rule of law. And once we lose the rule of law, we've really lost everything in America. So we can't afford to lose the rule of law. And so on immigration, we've got our great sheriff, as well as the sheriff up in Teller County and others who really have stood up. As many of you know, in Colorado, several years ago, the governor and the state legislature decided they wanted this to be a sanctuary state. And so they started passing laws. And one of the laws that they passed said that this sheriff and other sheriffs can't work with ICE to hold someone on a detainer and turn them over to ICE if they've arrested them for something else or they're holding them for something else. Now, that's just wrong. I was thinking of this the other day, Sheriff. Well, the example I've used is bank robbery. If somebody robs a bank in Colorado Springs, the Federal Bureau of Investigation shows up because it's a federal crime, because you're crossing state lines, and so FBI has jurisdiction. What if the FBI just decided one day, you know what, we're just not going to do bank robberies anymore? What happens to our system? I was fortunate enough a couple weeks ago to go out with a deputy of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office on a ride-along. And if you've never done that, I would encourage you to do it. I know citizens can sign up to do that. It's a great opportunity to walk in the footsteps of the men and women who serve you in this community and his deputies. And first of all, let's give the sheriff and those deputies a round of applause. Absolutely. Because if you haven't walked up on a car in the dead of night with tinted windows with a little flashlight that you're sticking in, you ought to try that sometime. See what you think about it. But as we were doing that, he pulled over someone for speeding, looked at their tag, and decided that their tag was expired. So this sheriff's deputy said, well, I got to give him a ticket for that. And he said, the state is asking for their money. Well, what happens if the sheriff decides all of a sudden, I'm not going to help the state. I don't want to help them anymore. The state would run out of money. So our system only survives if we help one another on these things. And that's what the American people expect. They pay for good government. They pay for the sheriff and for others to do good things and work with other federal agencies. And so the governor, as I said, passed these laws, these sanctuary city laws, and sanctuary state laws, to the point where the governor 2 years ago in 2023, defended on Twitter, I don't know if it was Twitter or X then, whatever it was, he defended the Biden administration and thanked them for making permanent temporary residency for Venezuelan refugees so that they could stay here in Colorado. That's what he did. Now, then in 2024, just last year, the city of Denver they put a document up on their website that was a blueprint for a sanctuary city, trying to tell other cities around the country, here's how you can be a sanctuary city. So that's what they've done. And with that comes crime. With that comes all of the breakdown of the rule of law, and we see it. And we see people coming across our border, bringing fentanyl, ravaging our communities, ravaging our families. And it's wrong. Now the governor, after seeing what happened in the November election, is trying to say, well, we're not a sanctuary state. Baloney, we're not a sanctuary state. He spent years trying to make it a sanctuary state. And the good sheriff here and others, there's a bill in the legislature, and I'll stop talking, and he's the real expert on it. But this bill in the legislature would repeal all those laws. I would say to the governor, if you don't think we're a sanctuary state, then sign that bill that repeals all those other bills, and I'll show up and thank you for doing it. So I'll stop there.
Jeff,
yes.
I think you need a mantra: sign that bill.
Sign that bill.
Yeah,
sign that bill. That's right.
Sign
we'll get going.
Bill.
That's right. But our sheriff is great. He's been a friend for so many years, and El Paso County is very fortunate to have all the men and women of the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, but especially the leadership of Sheriff Joe Roybal.
Thank you, Congressman. I don't do well sitting down. I'll try to stay in one place. I know it's easier for the audiovisual people, but I get passionate about this. And I am willing to come and speak as frequently as you want because I have a lot to say. I'm not shy in sharing that. It's no accident I'm up here. I'll briefly talk about my father, my origin story, who contracted polio at the age of 2 and was told he could never walk again. And so he spent from 2 to 3 and 3.5 in a hospital in Colorado Springs. He was born in Trinidad, in Colorado Springs, away from his family. And as he learned to ride a trike and eventually learned to walk with braces, he had crutches. Eventually learned to walk without those crutches. And then eventually in high school with no appliance at all. Well, being raised in the 80s, which is, I think, the best time to be a kid, right? From the music to the toys to the movies, all the things, right? We weren't very sensitive to people with disabilities back then. And my dad walked with a very pronounced limp, kind of like swinging his legs. And so as I was growing up, people would point and make fun of him. And so it really hurt me, deeply hurt me and wounded me, that the man that I admire, who went to work and provided for my family every day, did the best he could, was ridiculed for something he had no control of. And so I call those people bullies. So my entire life, I've been outspoken against bullies. And that's going to lead to something here. Pastor Steve talked about influence this morning, and that's what I want to talk about. I was born and raised here in Colorado Springs, and while I'm here, while I have this opportunity to influence the county, influence the state, and represent you all, I'm going to do it with everything I have, with tenacity. The only person who probably sleeps less than me is Miss Cassandra and my lovely wife, who's not here this morning. She's everywhere with me, everywhere I go, and God really blessed me with my wife, and I wish she was here this morning, but she's preparing things for our family. Let's talk about influence. Last year, not all of the sheriffs, like this year, agree with the immigration, agree with some of the drug laws. And we were able to, Cassandra and I, we were able to influence the county sheriffs of Colorado that represents the sheriffs to agree on the immigration bill. Some of them didn't. Now, I won't tell you who, but there are some sheriffs here in Colorado that have weekly conversations with the governor. They're Democrats. They have weekly conversations with the governor. And we were able to convince them that this immigration law should pass. Now, they killed it. The legislature killed that bill. It died, but it came up again this year. This year, it's going to be a little tougher for them to say, well, we don't have a problem here, because you can just look at Denver and Aurora, right? There's problems here. So again, along with Sheriff Jason Mikesell in Teller County, we formed a coalition last year, a coalition of sheriffs separate from the rest of the sheriffs in Colorado to try to influence people and send our message. We've done that again this year. Now, Sheriff Mikesell was very successful. The ACLU sued him twice. They've lost twice. They've sued El Paso County, and they won under the last administration. Now they're threatening to sue me like they did the last sheriff. Well, here's the difference. I had my attorney scrub that law. I said, I think we can work with ICE up to this limit, and then maybe push it just a little bit. And I've worked with Sheriff Mikesell up in Teller. I said, how are you able to do it? El Paso County got rid of 287G. We quit working with ICE. I said, I want to do that again. I was a young deputy, and I wrote the SOPs on how to pick up around the state for illegal immigration. So I know something about it. I've been doing this a minute. I said, I think we can do it again. And I publicly, I'm not going to do it in the shadows. I need you all to know what I'm doing. I need you all to know that I'm representing you and representing our home. ACLU sent out the letter threatening to sue all the sheriffs if we worked with ICE. Now let's talk about this. ICE is the only federal agency I'm not allowed to work with. Colorado has says it is illegal for you, Sheriff, to contract with ICE. Oh, and by the way, probation officers cannot work with ICE. Now, they're state. They can't communicate with ICE if it's an illegal. What does that say? So they're on probation because they committed a crime, and they commit another crime and violated probation and parole, but they're not allowed to tell ICE. Not only is it a sanctuary state, it's a sanctuary for criminals in that case, because criminals are accountable to probation and parole, but the state says they can't talk to ICE. How many people didn't know that? Be involved. That's what this state is doing. And that's where my influence representing you comes in, because I know that's wrong. And so when the ACLU sent that letter, they're a bully. You all know how I feel about bullies. I said, Cassandra, the public needs to know. And if you don't follow us, I know Facebook, I hate social media myself, but it's necessary. Miss Cassandra here, she runs it all for me. Please follow us on EPC Sheriff's Office. Follow us on Facebook. We put all the great things the men and women do out there. We put updates on legislature. And we sent out that letter that the ACLU sent me, a threatening letter. We had a press conference, invited the media. The media showed up, even Denver. We're making noise in Denver. They came down to hear what we had to say. And surprisingly, Denver wrote a very, I wouldn't say complimentary, but fair news story. So I thank Denver for that, because they see it coming. And they see that I'm right within the law. That letter of the ACLU, we sent that out on Facebook. We sent it out through the media, all our social media channels, to say, listen, here's what the ACLU is doing. They're threatening to sue us if we work with ICE. I'm bringing back the 287G program, which is basically ICE agents. I have TFOs, and I'm sure there's law enforcement officers from different agencies out here this morning. My task force officers are allowed to work with ICE. I made it public. I said, you can work with ICE. You can work with immigration. Just like they work with the DEA, the ATF, and the FBI. Now we're working with ICE. We weren't doing that for years. Now, to be compliant with the law, because we are a system of rule here, I cannot house these people strictly on an ICE detainer. But I can hold them on a criminal offense. And guess what I do? We let ICE know that they're here, that we have them. I've met with ICE 2 weeks ago, and they assured me that El Paso County would be their priority in the state of Colorado. Isn't that awesome? One more thing, Pastor, I know I don't want to take all your time, Congressman. See, I need to keep coming back. Last Thursday, we had our first criminal immigrant who was handed over to ICE inside my jail. Handed over. Posted bond, was time to leave. Nope, you're not leaving. We have 6 hours to process that. We called immediately. 4 hours before we had to kick him out the door, ICE showed up. Now, a few years ago, we would let them go, and if ICE was in the parking lot, they tried to nab them. Well, that's kind of dangerous, wouldn't you agree? They have loved ones there, they have friends there, and we want to avoid that. I said, no, not in my jail. I'm responsible for the jail now. We will make that transfer inside the secure area where they know they have no weapons, they don't have family, because they need to be held accountable to you all and to the feds. So ICE came in, made that transfer, drove them out of the celly port in handcuffs, and off to another holding facility. That's what we're doing now here in El Paso County.
Okay. So this is for Sheriff Roybal. How can you support Mayor Yimmy's declaration that basically all illegals are welcome in Colorado Springs if they've not committed a crime? Can you challenge his policy?
So I was trying to avoid politics here. Being
Hey,
respectful.
you're at Wholehearted Men. We're wholehearted in here, so we ask hard questions.
Hey, I tell my staff all the time, there are no hard questions. I always say, hey, ask the question, how many people know who my boss is? And I get, the mayor's my boss. I get the commissioners are my boss.
Right.
I get city council's my boss. Sorry, Congressman, I've never gotten congressman's my boss. But I have a lot of bosses. Truth of the matter is, none of them are my boss. I'm an elected official, but who is my boss? See, they got the cheat sheet before I came in.
I know. That's why I invited you here.
Yes. You're my boss, and you all know who I answer to. The reason I'm here, right? Up above. Now, the city of Colorado Springs, I have no direct influence with their policies. I observe the law, maintain peace in unincorporated El Paso County. Colorado Springs is its own government. I can tell you, looking at this bill with Sheriff Mikesell, we've been very careful. Because as we went and testified last year, you need the whole story. We went and testified last year. I had a young lady who was there with her family, and she testified against that immigration bill. And she said, I am afraid to walk down the street. My family's afraid to walk down the street in El Paso County because, quote, the big bad sheriff is going to arrest us and deport us and break up my family. And I challenged, give me an example. So the legislature in this state, we are a sanctuary state, make no mistake about it. They are worried about us deporting immigrants and breaking up families. There's even rumors that I will send my deputies into elementary schools and take kids from schools. That's not true. So to get our foot in the door, to be able to combat this immigration problem we're focused on the criminals. Because who in their right mind is going to say, if somebody's committed a crime against the citizens of El Paso County and the state, they should stay here? Well, guess what? Some of them are saying that. So I am going after the criminals. And I want to focus on that because that is the only possible way we start to get these bad policies reversed. That is the honest answer. If I say, yep, all illegals or immigrants are illegal, that's never going to work. And guess what that leaves? That leaves the criminals out there to commit crime after crime after crime. And as luck would have it, 2 days before we had the press conference and I announced my change on immigration policies within my office, my deputies did some great work. They had a drone up in the air and they chased at somebody with a stolen vehicle. And they arrested somebody who had 3 forms of ID. They were all fake. Again, you got to follow us on social media. Drugs, stolen handgun, and was trying to steal another vehicle. And that person was here illegally. Now, it couldn't happen. It stated my case. And I told the public, this is who I'm going after. You have to allow me, the state and the governor have to allow me to hold this person. Because what has happened in the past, once they're done with their sentence or they bond out, they walk to commit crimes. Let me give you, I am answering the question, but let me give you a real true story when I went and testified last year. I gave an example. It's not a what if, it's a real case here in El Paso County. Someone who is here illegally sexually assaulted 3 girls under the age of 10. Now, I say that for the media, and then I turned around and said, no, let's call it what it is. He raped 3 girls under the age of 10. My investigators did a great job. Arrested the person. Well, guess what? Has a bond. That person bonded out. Now, there's no ties keeping him here in El Paso County. He's from another country. We call that a flight risk. Did that person go to court? Nope, see, they got the cheat sheet. No, he didn't go to court. We are not holding him accountable for his crimes. But what's worse than that? And here's where the legislature and the governor have a blind eye. They are not allowing me to serve justice for those victims. And not only that, do you think maybe there's more victims now than those 3? Absolutely. I've been doing this way too long. I know what that person's out there doing. So I'm focusing on the criminal activity to keep those people behind bars. And what I want to do is have a contract with state and IGA, intergovernmental agreement, to house those criminals in our jail even if they bond out on an ICE hold. That is still illegal in the state of Colorado. And that's what I'm asking. So ICE doesn't have to run and get there before the 6-hour mark, because 6 hours, I have to cut them loose or I violate the law. In the eyes of the state, I'm now a criminal. Unbelievable, isn't it? So that's what I'm asking the state to do. That's what Sheriff Mikesell is asking the state to do. So the policy on the mayor, I'm focusing on the criminals. Now, Colorado Springs Police, they are governed by the mayor. They have their own policies. I support all law enforcement, and they have to follow their boss's orders just like my deputies have to follow my orders. He has his view. I won't speak ill of it. I don't know why he has that view. We haven't had that conversation. He knows my stance on it, on the criminal element. But if I don't focus on the criminal element, we're not going to make any headway in this bad policy. So that's why I'm focused on the criminal element.
So, Sheriff Roybal, there has been some demonstrations downtown during the lunch hour. I think they've been anti-Trump, anti-Elon Musk. Do you know anything about that?
Right outside my building, yeah.
Yeah?
My building, it must say, come and demonstrate here. Or maybe they just know where I stand. It is absurd for me that these people, and I had demonstrations too, they have Roybal signs, anti-Roybal signs, and I take that as a compliment. When I look at who's out there, I'm like, well, okay, you didn't vote for me in the first place, and I'm surely not representing you. However, for the president and Elon Musk to identify wastefulness, I mean, you've all seen the reports. People on Social Security who are over 150 years old, and the checks are still being cashed. Billions and billions of dollars being diverted from our own needs here on our homeland. Unbelievable. For people to say you're doing a horrible job in identifying the corruption, and let's face it, the paybacks, the lining of the pockets, that doesn't make sense to me. But rule of law, they can demonstrate all they want, stay peacefully. Doesn't scare me away. I'll go outside and say hi to them. I don't agree with anything they say, but here's the influence piece again. You have a loud group of people who say, we don't agree with Trump. We don't agree with Elon Musk. But then you have a group of us who is 10 times larger than that group. And it's not just us in this room, right?
Yeah.
Here's the difference. We have to be just as loud as they're being, because they are wrong, and we do agree with Trump, and we do agree with Elon Musk in identifying that waste. So I don't mind at all that they come. They don't influence my beliefs, but as Americans, they have a right to share their opinion because I support the Constitution, and freedom of speech is part of that. So they can come in front of my building and demonstrate, even though they're wrong. But let's influence the people who we know, because we know President Trump is doing the right thing.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you.
If I could.
Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah,
on
let me
that?
just say something on two points there. With regard to the city of Colorado Springs and Mayor Yimmy's comments, I'll just say, how can I push back on that sort of thinking? And it's nothing personal against Mayor Yimmy or anyone else, but I'll say this. You're not entitled to federal funding. And if you're a city or a community, and I'm going to be rolling something out probably later this week or early next, there's no reason I can't check with ICE to make sure you're cooperating before I support a federal grant to a community. So if you want federal tax dollars, you better be helping the federal government enforce our immigration laws. And so I'm going to make sure as you're a member of Congress that I'm representing you and I'm helping the folks to understand, whether that's the state of Colorado or Denver or Colorado Springs or wherever it is. And, on the Elon Musk stuff, he's the new boogeyman for the left. Elon Musk, right? I mean, you have lost the argument when you are defending waste, fraud, and abuse in government. Like, give me a break. You have lost the argument. But I will tell you what we need. They are the left. For the first 3 or 4 weeks of President Trump, first 3 weeks, I guess, of President Trump's inauguration, or since his inauguration, they were stunned. The left was sort of taken aback. They didn't know what to do, and you didn't see much pushback. But they've awakened. They are out. They've got, I was just telling the pastor about this, but they're out at Costco sticking little postcards in people's windows, having them call me to tell me, if you're upset about the terrible things that Elon Musk is doing, call Congressman Crank's office and all of that. I appreciated it because they put a little picture of me. It was a nice picture and name ID. I figured it was good. But anyway, so they're out there doing that. So what we need, we can't fight amongst ourselves, right? For those who believe in limited government, we can't sit and fight I can't fight the sheriff, and the sheriff can't fight me, and we can't sit and nitpick about that. We've got to stand up now, and we've got to be as loud and as vocal about how important it is to get back to limited government, and particularly a limited federal government. So we need your help to do that.
So when I look at the tattered nature of the Republican Party in Colorado, and I come from Georgia, and then I was in Japan for many years, I've been in California, lived all around the world, I've never seen such an inability to work together. The name calling is ridiculous. These are friends of mine. And I've always said, you guys, that if I've got someone next to me of which I agree 75% of the time, it's way better than trying to hang out with people I agree with 5% of the time. So to win elections, we've got to be unified. We've got to work together. We've got to stop the name calling. And when I look at the military and these men that are deployed, when I look at busy moms that have families to feed, and I see busy men who have jobs to do, primaries are huge because it gives you a chance to narrow it down to 2 people and make a vote. Now, there's been some discussion about even eliminating the primaries. That's the most ridiculous, stupid thing that I've ever heard. And so, speak to that. Why are primaries important? Because you guys, no state doesn't have primaries. Primaries are key. And you're going to be hearing some things out there that are ridiculous. And I'm going to say, as a pastor and a leader, been in this state for over 30 years, been in the ministry for 40 years, I believe so much in limited government, the opportunity for men and women to vote, the opportunity for us to have a choice between 2 men or 2 women in a particular office. That's so huge. And so I just want to say, from my perspective, how important it is that we become unified. We've got to work as a team. And we may not agree on every little thing, but we've got to be okay with not agreeing with every little thing in order to win elections. That's the only way that we're going to turn a blue state into a red state and bring righteousness back into office where it should be. Do you guys get that? Okay. So, switching gears a little bit, one of the questions here, and I'm not sure, Congressman Crank, if you have any say over this. I don't think you do, but it says, what can you do to get rid of corrupt judges, and what will you do? Is there do you really have any role in that as a U.S. Congressman? I don't know.
Well, there's not a ton that we can do in that regard, other than, now, I will say there's going to be a lot of these decisions that you're seeing coming back, and there's a lot of them that are just blatantly anti-Trump, right? They're judges who were put in at the federal level by the Biden administration or the Clinton administration or Obama, and they're just blatantly, they're ruling against Trump no matter what. Now, those things are going to wind their way up to the Supreme Court, and many of these things will be overturned, and the rule of law will be upheld. And so that's the way the system works, thankfully. And I would say this, we talk about people getting upset. There's a lot of people who maybe didn't like Trump or whatever in 2016, but ultimately most Republicans came around and supported him. And I got to say this, thank goodness that he appointed the men and women to the Supreme Court that he did. They saved America. Yeah. They saved America, if you think about it. You think of all the decisions where those 3 Supreme Court justices that the president appointed, they were the pivotal vote in that. So it's so important that we do that. Now, we do have oversight if there's corruption in a judge or there's tons of decisions that there's this pattern. We need to look at that. The House Judiciary Committee, I'm not on that. I'm on the House Armed Services Committee, the House Natural Resources Committee. But the House Judiciary Committee has that responsibility to look at those. If they see that there is malfeasance on the part of a judge, they can bring that up to the House, and the House can vote to impeach, and then they would have a trial in the Senate, just like we've seen in the past with impeachment proceedings. One other thing on on unity of the party, and I completely agree with you. We have a 2-vote majority in the House of Representatives. If we're going to get any of President Trump's agenda through the House, we have to stick together. We can't go out and stick our face in front of a camera and try and get attention in the media by throwing our brethren in the party under the bus.
That's right.
We can't do that. And we have to be very disciplined in that. There's going to be things in this big reconciliation bill that's coming up that I'm not going to like. But if that's the only chance we have to save America and the president's on board, I'm very likely going to vote for that bill because that's our only chance, right? But I will say this to Ken Davis, who's over here, who just got elected last Saturday already? You're already looking older already. Yeah, feeling older, buddy. We met earlier, I guess at the end of last week, and I'm really heartened by it. I will tell you, Ken is going to be a great leader for the Republican Party. I'm looking forward to working with him and building a party. We've got several seats here. Jim Bolins is over there. He should have won House District 18. We need to work harder so that we take that seat back and several others, and we can begin to take our state back if we do that in a unified way, Ken.
That's great. Sheriff Roybal, the new law with CCW, July 1st, question about that. What are you doing to address that in relation to the backlog of everybody who's trying to get a concealed weapon?
Thanks for that question, because that's important for us that you know what we are doing. So the law he's talking about, July 1st, in order to get your concealed carry, you have to have an 8-hour class. Some of that includes range time proficiency. Here's the thing. El Paso County has the most CCWs in the state. We're up to 54,000 people carrying. I'm pretty sure we all have guns. Anticipating the push in that and the number of instructors, we've been really good with approving those new classes, those instructors. They have a card similar to the one I was wearing and their certificate. We do it up because people who teach that, they should be proud, and I want to recognize them for that. So what we've done to keep up with the demand, and we're already past that, we've added three additional full-time people. My staff who work on concealed carry, I have a staff of 5 and then a supervisor, so 6 total people. I have increased that staff by 50%, adding 3 more full-time people, and we still can't keep up. There's another idea we're working on where what if they come to my office with a picture and fingerprints already? That's going to save some time because rather than standing there and my staff print you, we can probably increase some appointments. However, there's 2 things to think about when making that decision. One, I have 90-day turnaround to get that concealed carry into your hands. 90 days to do the background check, make sure everything's good, go through the federal, go through state, and then get you that background. So if I have so many of these stacked up, it's going to be nearly impossible. We were at 76 days, claimed it to 80. I only have 90. I added another person just to work on background checks. We now got that down to 66 days, so we've made progress there. So I have some wiggle room. But the state has to accept those fingerprints, those cards from the vendor, from the instructor. And so we have a question in the state. We've already sent it to the state last week. Well, yesterday was a holiday. They're probably not in a hurry. We'll call again today. Hey, if we get the fingerprint card from our instructor, will you accept it? That will cut some time down. Is it going to solve the demand? Absolutely not. I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you. But we're doing everything that we can. I added 3 more full-time people. I added a 4th person just to do background checks. That has lowered that number, which gives us some room and some capacity to add additional appointments if we can take the fingerprint cards. Right now, there's no more room for appointments because of the fingerprint process. We're already at the end of July scheduling our appointments out because we have a high demand. We've done everything we can. This is one more tool. If the state says, no, Sheriff, we won't accept it, we won't accept those fingerprints from the instructor, then we're going to look at what we can do. I've already authorized overtime. People are coming in on weekends. They're working holidays to meet the demand that you all have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheriff. Okay, this is for you, Congressman Crank. America does not have an official language. Is now the time to make English the official language of the USA?
I think that's for Sheriff Roybal, isn't it? No, I'm kidding. No.
I only speak one language, and I struggle with that at times, as you've learned this morning.
Y'all but now is your dad? I mean, is your background, would it be Mexico, as far as how many, 3 generations back or so?
3 generations back.
So no Spanish in the home when you were growing up?
No.
Okay.
No Spanish in the home.
All right.
And I was not trying to avoid it. I was trying to be funny. Anyway. Well, look, I mean, it's pretty clear. You succeed in America if you know English. That is the official language, right? It's the official language of making money and of building the American dream. So if you want to come to the United States and you want to connect with that American dream, you have to learn English. And we have, I don't know that we need a law that officially says English is the official language of the United States. I think it'd probably be difficult to get that through. I don't know where the president would be on it. But I do know this, we need to get rid of this idea that somehow you can speak whatever language you want in the United States and you're going to be successful. You know, my family on my mom's side, came from Italy back in the early 1900s. And they were very clear. You can speak Italian inside the home, but when you walk out that front door, you speak English. Because that's your key, that's your ticket to the American dream and to assimilate. And we want a country, that's the beauty of America, is that we have a country where we have this common bond. We believe in the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and our individual rights. And, you know, we have that and we have this commonality, but at the same time, we respect that richness of other cultures who come here. And you know, we want to preserve that within the framework of still being American. So it's important, and we ought to do everything we can to encourage people to learn English and speak English in the United States, otherwise they won't be successful.
Okay, changing the subject to fentanyl. Was it hearings that they were having? Yeah, and was it the head guy with the Democrats in the Senate who walked out during? I mean, to me, fentanyl's just such a no-brainer, and it's unbelievable to me that the Democrats are that criminal in the way they look at things and how it's just destroying our state. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Specifically, I want to talk about Senate Bill 2544, which not last week, but the week prior, I went up to the legislature to testify in favor of. Again, I'm representing you. This was a bill that would make fentanyl and all of its derivatives a felony, class 1 felony. We all heard the horror stories, the small amount that it takes to kill people. I testified we need to do this instead of the misdemeanor that drugs are now. Ridiculous. I testified at 15 cases, just one of my detectives at Metro V&I, that's the narcotics team, 15 overdose deaths with misdemeanor level fentanyl. That should be a felony. If a drug dealer causes someone to die, that's like saying someone with a gun, which is so scary, goes and shoots 15 people. What do you think would happen? Guns should be outlawed, right? But, oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. I'll be there up there too. I'm representing you in Colorado, pushing back on that legislature. So I went and testified. Now, as you can imagine, when I go up there and testify, the Democrats really don't like me. The head of it stood up as I sat down to speak, and she left. But that's actually progress, because last year when I testified in favor of the immigration bill, 3 got up and left as I start to talk. So it's progress, right? And I gave the story of why we need to increase fentanyl. It's for our kids. We're saving kids' lives. Make no mistake, fentanyl is available in every high school in this city. Every high school in this county, there is fentanyl. Because the cell phone makes it ultra convenient to buy drugs. And they bring it in. That bill failed, folks. That is the mindset of the people that are representing Colorado and the lawmakers in this state. We made progress this last November. We need to make more progress. For the legislature to say, well, we don't want the people who are dealing fentanyl to be felons because they could be users, and those people need to seek assistance and counseling. They need to beat their addiction. So we have people who make money and profit off of that, testifying, oh no, people will be afraid to call the cops anyway. And I went and testified, hey, in my jail, we provide counseling. We provide addiction counseling. We provide MAT therapy. Because it's our jail, right? Each and every one of us who live in El Paso County, that's our jail. We pay for it. $16 million a year to operate that jail. Here's my promise to you. Your fellow citizen, when they enter that jail, some of them are very unhealthy, whether they're homeless and live on the streets or addicted to drugs or have a mental health concern. Each and every one of them leave that jail healthier than when they walked in, whether it's eyeglasses, it's dental, it's mental health, it's drug addiction. Because it's important for me when they get out, they don't victimize you again and they don't come back to jail. So let's try to get them healthy. It's all to try to make a healthier and safer community. But the legislature are tying my hands just like they did with ICE. I found a workaround with ICE. However, I can't charge felonies for fentanyl when it's only a misdemeanor case. But we'll bring it up again next year, or maybe even again this year.
Yep. Well, elections matter, you guys. Who we have in Congress in Denver really, really matters. And that's why we've got to work together in a synergistic, unified, consistent way in the Republican Party. Lastly, Congressman Crank, tell us a little bit. You know, we go way back, over 20 years together, and I remember how much you worked and how hard you worked, both in Congress before you ran for office, but then you lost, and then you lost again, and now you've won.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how you feel like God's hand has been on your life throughout all of this. Talk to us as a conclusion to our time together, because I know there's guys out here that have dreams. You guys have dreams, and some of them have been dashed, and you felt betrayed. You felt some failures in your life. And even last week at the road, I talked about shaming. I talked about facing shame. It's actually one of the habits, the unmentionables of our life. You've done that, Congressman. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great story, and there's even a better illustration of it that I think I can give you. So yeah, if you don't know the story, I ran for Congress 18 years ago in 2006. I ran against Doug Lamborn, and I lost that race in a 6-way primary by 892 votes. Not that I'm counting, but 892. No. But, at the time, I was obviously very disappointed. You go into these things, anything you pursue in life, you want to win. You want to attain that. So for me, that was very disappointing. And, personally, I had to confront all sorts of things in my life. There's anger. You have to overcome that. Failures. Could I have done better? All those things. But it wasn't until I sort of gave all that up, any bitterness or anything like that, that sort of this opportunity opened up. And what's so wonderful about the story is it was 18 years later, in 2023, when Doug Lamborn, the man I ran against and who we had a pretty bitter primary back in 2006, approached me and said, I'm thinking of maybe not running again. What would you do if I didn't? Would you run? And I mean, that's a testament, I think, to him. It's a testament to God's power to heal everybody's life in a situation like that. But what I've really come to realize is that this is the season that I was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. And I think back, I wanted that back in 2006, but had God put me there and I had won that race, what would I have been through? I would have sat through the Obama years. I would have been frustrated. I got elected to Congress at the best time in American history to be elected, right? And so it reminds me of a couple of scriptures. Proverbs 16:9 says, we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Mm-hmm. And then in Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them, right? So I want to end with a story about Ronald Reagan. And I was watching a documentary on Ronald Reagan the other day. Well, let me back up just real quick. Ronald Reagan had a national security advisor named Richard Allen. And I know Richard Allen. He lives in Denver now, but he was a longtime national security advisor for Ronald Reagan. And he tells the story about in 1974, he was talking to Governor Reagan, and Reagan said Reagan told him that he wanted to maybe run for president in 1976. So Richard Allen said, well, you know, Governor, you've never been to Germany, and if you want to run for president, you've got to go see the Berlin Wall. That's where East meets West. That's where the conflict between freedom and captivity resides. You've got to go see that. So Reagan said, okay, let's go. So Ron and Nancy Reagan and Dick Allen and his wife traveled for the very first time for Ronald Reagan to the Berlin Wall. And he tells this story. It still puts chills down the back of my neck when I hear this. But he says he's standing at the Berlin Wall with Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan looks at the wall, looks all the way up to the top of it, 1976, okay? Looks to the top of the wall, looks all the way down, reaches out and touches the wall, and he turns around to Dick Allen and he says, Dick, we got to tear this thing down. Isn't that amazing? It was 1976. But let me tell you about God's timing. So Ronald Reagan, that was 1974. Ronald Reagan ran for president in 1976 against Gerald Ford, tried to get the Republican nomination. He lost that race by just under 500 votes, just under 1,000 votes. But if basically 500 delegates to the Republican National Convention in 1976 would have voted for Reagan instead of Ford, Ronald Reagan would have been the nominee in 1976. Maybe he got defeated by Jimmy Carter. Maybe he beat Jimmy Carter in 1976. So let's say he won in 1976. Then in 1980, he ran and he won again. That's the most successful he could have been. By 1984, he would have been out of office. Mikhail Gorbachev came along in 1986.
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
So he would have never had that chance. Now, I'm sure Ronald Reagan was deeply disappointed in 1976 when he didn't win. But God knew when he wanted and when he needed and when America and the world needed Ronald Reagan in the White House. And it was from 1980 to 1988. Isn't that an amazing story?
Yeah. So Reagan needed Gorbachev to tear down that wall.
Yep.
I think Trump needed 4 years of Biden to put him in a new place, in a new process, and a new platform with the American people.
Yeah, I think that's right. And and if you look at that's right. I think history will write that story as well. Mm-hmm. But it's just, to me, it's fascinating. I think of Ronald Reagan and how bitterly disappointed he was in 76. But God knew all along that. I think the tear down this wall speech was in 1984 or 83. 1983, he did that. And of course, you know, Mikhail Gorbachev came along later to help Ronald Reagan do that. Isn't that great?
So
great story.
That's beautiful, man. Well, let's close in prayer, you guys. Would you all extend your hands up to these men who represent you in very strategic places? Father, thank you so much for the breakthrough courage of our sheriff and our U.S. congressman. We thank you for them. We love them. We appreciate their willingness to take heat by standing in the gap for the things that are righteous and the rule of law